We all love 3D Mario games, right? I'm sure we can at least agree that some 3D Mario games are better than others. For every galaxy you have a sunshine, it's just the way it is. But one thing I've noticed over the years is that when you ask somebody, what is your favorite 3D Mario game, they never say Super Mario 3D Land. This game, released for the 3DS in November 2011, has somewhat faded into obscurity over the years, partially because it often gets overshadowed by its successor, Super Mario 3D World. And while every other 3D Mario game has at least one defining trait that sets them apart from each other, you can't say that for 3D Land. However, after replaying it, I've realized that it's not a bad game. Not at all. So why is it that seemingly nobody remembers this game? Well, let's see what went wrong here. Back in 2011, the Nintendo 3DS was released, and it had some pretty big shoes to fill. The Nintendo DS was a very successful handheld, and it set many records for Nintendo. This was basically a portable Nintendo 64, and it had games that were never seen on a handheld console before. But something that it was lacking was a 3D Mario game. Sure, we had Super Mario 64 DS, which was a great demonstration of what the DS could do, but it wasn't anything original, just a remake of the N64 game, leaving many wanting an original 3D experience for the console. Well, thankfully, we did eventually get that on the 3DS. It was announced at E3 2011 that a new 3D Mario game would be released later that year, and eventually we got it with Super Mario 3D Land. However, the game immediately raised some red flags. This was not a traditional 3D Mario game. At the time, 3D Mario games were defined by their mission-based levels with open level design, and while Galaxy and Galaxy 2 went for a more linear approach, it still had those sunshine-esque moments with the different planets and galaxies you could explore. But with 3D Land, it goes even further. This feels like a 2D Mario game turned into a 3D game. Right off rip, you're put into this world map that heavily resembles Overworld maps from the new Super Mario games. The game is divided into separate worlds, each containing individual levels. That was not something that people were used to seeing from 3D Mario at the time. It was almost kind of jarring, especially after we got Mario Galaxy 2 the previous year. The differences between these two games are night and day. 3D Land is a much more streamlined experience. The gameplay is complicated. It's not bad, far from it, but it's different from any previous 3D Mario game. I mean, this isn't surprising because each game had different controls and physics, and overall each 3D Mario game had something to make them feel unique. Each of the games also had a gimmick to set them apart from one another. Mario 64 was the basis of all of it. Sunshine had the Flood Pack, Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 had the Spin Thing, and even after 3D Land came out, we had Mario Odyssey with Cappy. But with 3D Land, there isn't some gimmick to set it apart from those games. I mean, I guess the main difference here is that Mario can only move in 8 directions, which does limit your movement quite a bit. It does make some of the more platformy moments more difficult, but with the ground pound, wall jump, and backflip, it feels as close to a traditional 3D Mario game as it possibly could on the hardware it's running on. And even though it has some minor flaws, the game is still fun. There were rarely any moments where I'm like, oh damn, the controls really f***ed me over here, because at least the level design is somewhat centered around Mario's limited control. The power-ups also help with this quite a bit. Now, 3D Mario games aren't necessarily known for having traditional Mario power-ups. Mario 64 had the caps, Sunshine had the different flood nozzles, and then the Galaxy games did introduce some actual power-ups, but they all relied on Mario's spin mechanic, and a lot of them were on a timer as well. So I would consider 3D Land to be the first 3D Mario game to fully implement power-ups like this, because they work the same way as they do in the 2D games. You hit a question mark block, you get a power-up, and you keep that power-up as long as you don't get hit. You can also store a second one in your inventory if you happen to lose the one you have equipped. I know this was mainly put in here as a handicap, but I actually found some strategy with it. Like, say if you have a fire flower and a Tanuki Leaf on hand, I would use the fire flower to wipe out a bunch of enemies and then switch to the Tanuki Leaf to help with platforming. You know, it's just stuff like that. The power-ups themselves are actually pretty fun, with the obvious highlight being the Tanuki Leaf. I feel like every Mario game has at least one super broken power-up, and yep, the Tanuki Leaf serves that purpose quite well here. With it equipped, you can whack enemies with your tail and float over long distances. Unfortunately, you can't fly with it like you could in previous games, but given that this is now in a 3D space, it would have been broken as hell. It is still pretty broken though, as you can often skip large chunks of the levels, which is great for speedrunning. It's just a load of fun. The fire flower also returns here, and it's pretty much what you would usually expect from the thing. I do think it's cool how it can also be used to do things like light torches, which is a mechanic used in a couple of the levels, but yeah, other than that, you just shoot fireballs at enemies, like whatever. New to this game is the boomerang flower. Now, if I'm being completely honest with you, I don't see a reason to use this over the Fire Flower. You throw a boomerang and it comes back to you. It can kill enemies, and on rare occasions you do need it to nab some of the star coins. But other than that, the Fire Flower can pretty much do the same thing. I like the idea of the boomerang flower, but it doesn't do much to warrant me using it. I think it would have been awesome if it let you curl up into a shell and kill enemies that way. I don't know, just something different with it. But yeah, when playing this game, it's best to just hold on to a shitload of Tanuki Leaves. You will need to use the other power-ups now and again for collectibles, but that's it. Another defining trait of 3D Mario games is the levels. These games have some of the best level designs and ideas in video game history. Not Mario 3D Land though. I know it's kind of unfair to compare 3D Land's level design to, say, Mario Galaxy, especially considering the sheer amount of ideas shoved into the Galaxy games. Like, literally every single level in those games introduces something new. Mario 3D Land has some cool ideas, don't get me wrong, but none of them stand out to me, and a lot of them blend together as well. Like, you have these falling blocks, for example. Cool, but you also have these disappearing platforms in some of the Boo House levels. They're not the same thing, obviously, but it's the same premise. There are a lot of instances like that in this game, and even when a lot of the levels have unique ideas, a lot of them are kind of forgettable. There are maybe a couple of levels that stand out, but there's nothing that makes me go, oh my god, this level is so damn cool. It just doesn't happen. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I would rather have consistency over a few levels with good ideas and then the rest with bad ideas, but I am kind of disappointed with how ideas were implemented here. I think the level design is also pretty lame for the most part. I know there were probably a bunch of restrictions brought by the hardware, but these levels are short, man. There are 8 main worlds in this game with around 6 to 7 levels each, but you can breeze through all of that in less than a couple of hours. I mean, hey, the bite-sized nature of these levels was probably exactly what they were aiming for, considering that this game was on the 3DS. You were just meant to pick this game up, play a few levels for like 10 minutes, and then put it down. I mean, hell, the game reminds you like every 30 minutes to take a break. You were not meant to breeze to the end of the game in one afternoon. Each world also has either a Bowser Castle or an airship at the end. Other than having lava and, airship, these levels don't do much to set themselves apart from the main stuff. Except for the bosses, of course. The castles all have these classic encounters with Bowser, where you just have to dodge his attacks and hit the switch to drop him into the lava. Nothing too crazy. And then we have the fights with Boom Boom and Pom Pom, and all you have to do is jump on their heads 3 times. Good god, how lame is that? They switch it up sometimes by introducing a new obstacle that's in your way, and I wasn't expecting much here, but come on, it could have been a little better. Like, even when the bosses get more difficult throughout the game, they all still feel the same. Speaking of difficulty, this game is easy as hell. Even in the final world, most of the levels are pretty easy. And even if you suck at the game, if you die enough times, the game gives you the white Tanuki Leaf, which grants you full invincibility. And you best believe as a kid, I just died over and over again on purpose to get that leaf. Anyway, final level, let's get it. Oh, that's not the end of the game. Ah, a classic fake out ending here. World 8 has a couple of extra levels to explore after you think the game is over. That's actually pretty cool. The final boss isn't anything special, just a prolonged Bowser encounter that kind of reminds me of the final battle from New Super Mario Bros. Wii, which is fine enough by me. Anyway, we beat Bowser, save Peach, the credits roll, and the end. Right? No, actually that's only half of the game. Once you beat the main part of the game, you get access to 8 entire special worlds with the same number of levels as the base game. So when you think you've beaten the game for the first time, you've actually only played half of it. Now, the special worlds themselves aren't that special, as we just have harder, remixed versions of levels from the base game. But these are still fun. This is the difficulty that I wanted from the base game. So it's cool that it has an extra hard mode, basically. There are even some new power-ups in here. You have the rock Tanuki Leaf, statue leaf, which mimics the Tanuki Leaf from Mario 3. Just a normal Tanuki suit, but now when you ground pound, you turn into a rock. Okay, that's pretty cool, I guess. And then we have the poison mushroom, which fucking hurts you, like, damn, okay, Nintendo, we're doing this again. But yeah, other than that, it's just more Mario 3D Land. Just some extra stuff to do in the game. Oh yeah, you also unlock Luigi as a playable character after you beat the first special world, which is a pleasant surprise. But he controls pretty identical to Mario, just with a floatier jump and more loose physics. Still a cool addition though. They were just very bad at keeping his inclusion a secret. But to completely 100% the game, you have to play every single level in the game as both Mario and Luigi, which isn't that bad considering that every level is pretty short, but you also have to get to the top of every flagpole, which is very simple when you have the Tanuki Leaf equipped. And you have to collect every star coin in the game, and there are 3 of them in each level. They're not super hidden though, so they're really just a fun extra collectible. Some of them are found in these 3D rooms, which are pretty much the only thing in this game that utilizes the 3D feature of the 3DS. It just kind of sucks when you're playing the game on a 2DS. But once you do all of that, you unlock the final challenge, Special 8 Crown, an entire gauntlet to test your skill. And I just could not beat this level for the life of me when recording footage. But trust me, I've done it before. But yeah, that's Super Mario 3D Land. What do you want me to say? On the surface, this game didn't live up to the hype of a brand new 3D Mario game, and it especially sucked because the DS had a full traditional 3D Mario game, even if it was just a remake. However, looking back, I think I can safely say that 3D Land was not trying to live up to the hype of a new 3D Mario game. It was just trying to be its own thing. It was never supposed to be this grand adventure. It was just supposed to be a fun little game to play on the 3DS, and that was all it really needed to be. We already had Galaxy 2 a year prior, and shortly after 3D Land, we got 3D World, which is practically just 3D Land on crack. So we already had our fair share of 3D Mario at the time. So I think 3D Land is a very fun game on its own. It's just kind of underwhelming when compared to other 3D Mario games, which is pretty much why I think I see nobody talking about this game anymore. So go give the game a try if you haven't yet. If I had to give it a score, maybe a solid 6.5 out of 10. It's not bad, just pretty average. But that's all for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.